his name I can't remember.
Jonathan?
Jonathan, yeah, and they seem to like it, so. Okay. So, British politics, political system and recent history. You understand that? Recent history?
Yeah.
Do you know what this building is? We did.
Big Ben.
Yeah.
That's Big Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what the whole building is called? We did it on the London tour.
Palace.
Yes, very good. Palace of...
Government. It is
Yes, the government.
but
It's the Palace of Westminster.
Well,
Really good. That was really good. It's not actually a palace, despite the name. So yeah, this is where the government meets. There's two houses. So like I think in the US, you have the Senate and the House of Representatives. Do you have the same here in Colombia? You have the Senate. Is there like a second house? Or is it just one?
Just one.
Just the Senate. Well, in here, it's called the House of Commons, which is the most famous, most, I guess, widely known, and the House of Lords. But we'll talk about the difference in a second. Oh yeah, okay. Oops. A lot of people ask, when I say I'm from the UK, the first questions that people have is, what's the difference between England, the UK, Britain, right? It doesn't really make sense. So the next few slides are about that. What you basically need to know, the UK is a country, but inside it, there are 4 countries. So 4 countries in a country. And this is called, well, it's not actually called this. This is closely tied to the concept of devolution. I believe the translation in Spanish is devolución.
Devolución.
But I don't think it means much to you.
No.
Because it's not really a term that's used outside the UK. The closest I can give an example is federalism. It's not really the same thing, but I'll explain that in a second. So, I mean, this is a very useful map. So this, if you look here, this is the UK. The UK, United Kingdom, is in blue. And here it is split into its countries. If I point at them, do you think you can name each of them? This white one?
England.
England.
The green one? Sorry, I'll bring it closer.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's quite a small screen.
Gales?
Wales.
Yes, Wales.
Wales.
Okay, Wales.
It's also the
I
same.
mean Spanish. Sorry.
That's all right. I understood what you meant.
Scotland.
Scotland.
It's
Very good.
Scotland.
Irlanda del Norte.
No,
Yeah,
that-
Northern. Right.
Good
Right.
Spanish.
Do you know how to say it in English? It's literally the same.
Northern.
Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland.
Northern.
Yeah, so north is like north. Northern is like, you would say, the northern part. For example, so Northern Ireland. But this is not part of the UK. So yesterday, both Angelica and Jonathan thought this was part of the UK. This is a very, very important distinction to make.
Okay.
Do not say this to an Irish person, because they will punch you. For
But
historical reasons.
Ireland,
Okay.
And there was also, we'll talk about it a bit later. Have you ever heard of the Troubles? The Troubles. Trouble is like a
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
put- yes.
Yeah, it's like problems or
uh-huh.
something like
yeah, but no, but this is a literal word. The Troubles is the name given to a conflict in Northern Ireland between.
Okay.
Have you heard of the IRA? ERA?
See, yeah.
Is what word should I use here? A armed group, let's call them that to be nice, who supported Northern Ireland joining the rest of Ireland. So that's a really important event in British history, which we can talk about. Yeah, this whole situation is still very, very tense. It's kind of like the situation here with the armed conflict and FARC and some of the guerrilla groups. Although there isn't actual fighting anymore, well, not much, it's still quite a sensitive topic. You have to be careful what you say.
Mhm.
Do you understand? How have you read through it all, or need a bit more time? Do you understand?
I don't know. I don't understand the
Okay.
evolution term
Yeah.
in Spanish. I don't.
Yeah. Do you understand?
don't
Does
get
anyone
it.
want to try and explain what they think devolution?
Yes,
It's called
yes.
devolution, actually. Means.
Yeah. In my view, it's like the main government gives pieces of authority
Mm-hmm.
to each part of the UK.
Yeah, pretty much. So devolution. So there was one central UK Parliament in Westminster. So the Palace of Westminster, the Houses of Parliament, which I showed on the first slide, there was a picture. That is kind of the supreme, I guess supreme means like highest parliament for the whole country. But each country,
for
the
UK.
UK, for the whole of the UK,
Okay.
each individual country, so actually not England, but Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have their own parliaments as well. And those are kind of a step
Okay.
below. So they have...
And England don't have.
England doesn't, which I'll talk about in a
doesn't
second.
have. Yeah. I get it.
So, but each, they don't have the same. So, for example, some things that are delegated. Do you know this word?
Yeah.
Delegated to those parliaments for their country. So, for example, Scotland has control over education and health policy in Scotland. So, during the COVID pandemic, there were different rules in Scotland than there were in England for that reason. But there are some things that aren't delegated. So, things like what have I said here? National security, so defence, the army, civil service. Westminster controls all of that for the whole country, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland included. So that's the difference between federalism, which is where basically each state is pretty much run independently, more or less. Westminster is still the highest parliament. That's what you just need to understand about devolution is. That's basically, and including devolution itself. So that devolution came from Westminster. So the government in Westminster decided to give the authority to the different countries. They could also take it back, but they probably wouldn't. It was quite controversial. It wouldn't go down very well. Also Greater London. So London has devolved authority to a certain extent as well. Like the City of London has. This is just a timeline. Northern Ireland gained authority in 1921. That's about the same time that Ireland left the UK. I think it was for the same reason. And with Scotland and Wales in 1998, so much more recent. And like you said, England is the only country with no devolved authority because the Westminster Parliament is it's the Parliament for the UK as a whole, but also for England. So in some cases, there are issues where which are only apply to England, but you have people from Scotland and Wales voting on these issues, which is a bit controversial. It's called the West Lothian issue. West Lothian is a place in Scotland, and there was a representative from there who always kept talking about this problem, so they called it the West Lothian issue. It's not very big, though. It doesn't really matter. Just as long as you understand the concept of devolution.
Devolution.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
You understand? Okay, as long as you get the idea.
This devolution.
Oh, yeah,
Sounds
Weird.
Weird,
yeah.
weird.
But you won't hear it anywhere outside of the. For example, Germany is a federal state, so it has it's federal, so it has different states like the US, kind of. But you won't hear devolution talked about outside of the UK because it's not really a concept anywhere else in the world. Right, we did this already. Scotland, England is red. These are kind of the national colours, more or less. Scotland is blue, England red, Wales is green, Northern Ireland is yellow. Understand?
Yeah.
Very.
I had a question. The people from Scotland or North Ireland or Wales could live in England
Yes.
easily? Or,
Easily. Yeah.
Don't need a.
There's no.
That doesn't need a permit or.
No. There's no. Jonathan had a similar question yesterday. You can live anywhere in the UK without needing a visa, for example. There's no border control. Nothing like that. It's one big country. It's maybe easier to think of these as states, I suppose, because because if you say country, you think it's like a country, and it's like very different.
I don't know. Do you have to like two nacionalidad, ¿cómo se dice?
Nationality.
Nationality.
Yeah.
Nationality. If you have a UK or you have for England or
No,
Scotland.
it's just the UK.
UK.
Just the UK. There's the same passport everywhere. I think maybe Northern Ireland might be different.
Okay.
No, there's no Welsh passport. There's no Scottish passport.
Okay.
It's just the UK. So this is so when I say people say Britain, they usually mean the UK. This is technically wrong. The full name of the country is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Oh, that's long.
It's long. And the difference is, so Great Britain is this island here.
Okay.
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland are Great Britain. Sorry. Scotland, Wales, and England are Great Britain. Northern Ireland is separate. So because it's on the island of Ireland,
Yeah.
it's like it's not
So
part of
other
Great Britain.
island.
Yeah, exactly. So Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
You also have these territories here. This is called the Isle of Man.
Okay.
This little one here.
Uh-huh.
These ones down here near Normandy in France are called the Channel Islands. Channel Islands. Because this is called the English Channel, is the name of this sea here. These are not part of the UK.
small.
Very small. I have a lot of friends from here actually. We're at university. These are not part of the UK.
Okay.
But they are owned by the UK. They're called Crown Dependencies. It's similar to the Falkland Islands. You know what those are? Islas Malvinas?
Yeah.
So just like the Falkland Islands, they are owned by the UK, but then they're not part of the UK. Similar to how France, I think, has overseas territories that are kind of French, but not part of France,
Okay.
technically. It doesn't really matter. They're very small. You don't need to worry about them.
Okay.
You'll never go to them, I doubt.
I have another question.
Mm.
There's a big land close to Spain that belongs to UK, right?
Yes, it's called Gibraltar. I can never say this name. Gibraltar?
Gibraltar?
Gibraltar? I'll show you a map. It's just my pronunciation. You may have heard of it before. It's not an island, but you're right. It's controversial as well because they want to have it back. Here you are. So this is Gibraltar. I'll zoom out in a second.
Okay.
It's not technically an island, and it is here. It's a very important location, militarily, because it controls the entrance to the Mediterranean. So this is like the examples I just showed you in the Falkland Islands. It's a Crown Dependency. It says British Overseas Territory there. I think they're the same thing. So, for example, they have their own national team in football team, for example. So they are kind of a country, but kind of not. It's a bit odd. You don't have people who live here have Gibraltar citizenship, I think, not UK citizenship. But Spain wants it back, but they're not going to get it. So, because obviously it's much closer to Spain than it is to UK. Any other questions?
No.
You understand everything?
Yeah, well.
The crown dependencies.
Yeah.
Dependencies. I don't know. Citizens of the crown dependencies have.
It's a difficult. I don't actually know.
Enter to UK.
Yes,
without problem.
Because the taxes are much lower.
Yeah.
So British citizens. You heard of Lewis Hamilton? Do you watch Formula One?
Formula One, yeah.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
He changed his citizenship to Monaco because of the lower taxes, for example. It's just an island in the sea. There's nothing there. Okay, so we're going to go now into each of the countries, a bit more information about each of them. This is England, obviously. London, you may know, is here. This is the flag, St. George's Cross. St. George is the patron saint of England. 56 million people. It's the largest of the 4 countries by quite a long way. St. George.
St. George.
Yeah, is the patron. Do you know patron saint? Is that the national saint? I don't know in Colombia who is the.
It's maybe it's what's the name? Simón Bolívar.
Oh, okay.
Yes, well, I mean he's a religious figure, so he's He's religious, so he comes from the Bible,
Religious.
basically.
Okay.
Do you know
What
Saint?
is-
Santo?
Santo,
Yeah,
Yeah, he's the
Santo.
patron saint.
Yeah.
Santo Nacional.
Saint.
Yeah.
Patron saint. Patron means he's like represents that country, basically.
Yeah,
So he's the patron saint is Saint George, and that's his. This is called the Saint George's Cross.
Okay.
You'll often see this cross. A cross is like a
Cruz. Sí.
yeah.
Yeah.
You'll often
I'm
see
just
this.
learning
You'll often
that.
see this at football
That
matches.
word, sorry.
Yeah. Football matches for the England national team. You'll see this a lot. Parliament is in Westminster, like we talked about. It also has power over UK-wide issues like defence. Two main political parties. I should have put political parties. Partidas.
Yeah.
Are Conservatives, who are in power at the moment, and Labour.
Labor.
There used to be a third one called the Liberal
Labour.
Democrats, but not really anymore. It kind of it's mainly these two now. For the last 10 years, it's been always been them. But
Nowadays, what is more popular, conservatives or
the Conservatives are in power, so they are there is a Conservative government at the moment, and there has been a Conservative government for 13 years. It's a long time, but they're very unpopular, or fairly unpopular at the moment. So, the polls, do you know what I mean by polls? Like the surveys, they are more popular.
Okay.
Scotland forever. Scotland up here. This is the St Andrew's cross. And it's actually it is a cross, but it's a different cross of Scotland, and it's also called the Saltire sometimes. 5 million people, so much less than the UK. Parliament is in a place called Holyrood, which I think is near Edinburgh, and it has a really strong independence movement led by the Scottish National Party, or the SNP. And they held an independence referendum in 2014, but it failed. Sucked to be there. But they're trying to get another one. It's a really big thing in Scottish politics, especially since Brexit. We'll talk about Brexit later.
Independence for UK?
Yeah.
From the UK. Yeah, so they want to be an independent country.
Okay.
But because of so most of Scotland voted against Brexit. So because Brexit passed, they felt unrepresented by. There's a lot of dissatisfaction between people in Scotland who don't feel represented by Westminster, because Westminster is still the national parliament.
I heard a news about Scotland, and was that in Scotland the most popular religion is Catholic, right? Or not?
I think it's Protestantism. I think it's Protestants, but there is a strong Catholic minority.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of atheists, obviously, as well.
Protestant.
Yeah.
Protestant?
Protestant?
Yeah, it's
Protestant?
Okay.
Protestant.
Protestant. Protestant is
Protestant.
I am Protestant.
Yeah.
And then the religion is called Protestantism.
Ism.
Like Catholicism.
It's okay.
Yeah, but the main thing to know about Scottish politics is this independence movement, very strong. This is in Welsh. Yeah. This is,
Flag is so beautiful.
yeah, I know. It's the flag of Wales. The red dragon is a really famous symbol of Wales. The Parliament is in Cardiff, which is the capital. It's where is it? There. Wales is kind of best known. It has a Welsh language. It's the only language other than English to have official language status in the UK. So, but only in Wales. So in Wales, the two official languages are English and Welsh. So that is how to say Wales in Welsh.
Okay. It's similar to English? Or?
No, it's a Celtic language. So English is a Germanic language with French influences as well. Welsh is a Celtic language, so it's kind of like Irish and Scots are also Celtic languages. So very different.
Yeah.
They use the same alphabet. It's just. Welsh, has official language status, and there are growing numbers of people speaking Welsh after its revival. It was kind of revived in the 1960s. So before that, it was kind of dead. Not really dead, but very few people took it. Then there was a movement to try and, for example, have street names in Welsh, have signs in Welsh, like Welsh schools, and now I think about 25% of the population speaks Welsh, which is really good. A lot better. The largest party is Welsh Labour, so it's Labour. It's a different party to the Labour in England, but it's related. They're like sister parties, I guess you would say.
Okay.
And there's a party called Plaid Cymru, which supports Welsh independence. But it's not as big as Scottish independence. It's less. There hasn't been a referendum, and there hasn't really been a serious attempt to get one either. So Scottish independence is the biggest independence movement. Finally, the most controversial, Northern Ireland. Officially, there is no flag because there's a lot of politics and a lot of disagreements about the flag. Because as you can see, this is the Ulster banner. This is the flag of England with this. I think it's called the Hand of Ulster. Ulster is a place in Northern Ireland. Obviously, if you're one of the people who didn't want Northern Ireland to be part of the UK, you probably wouldn't like this flag very much because it's the flag of England. You understand?
Yeah, okay.
For that reason, it's controversial. 2 million people, so quite small.
2 million people?
Yeah.
It's too small.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. It's actually not a very big place.
Yeah, it's a big place.
Parliament is in a place called Stormont, which is in Belfast. You know Belfast? Belfast is the capital. Belfast is, where is Belfast? It's there, right there. Like we said before, historically very strong tensions, and all Irish nationalists are the people who want to join Ireland. Very strong, lots of violence for about, I don't know, 40 years or something. A lot of people died. After there was, in 1998, there was a peace deal called the Good Friday Agreement. Good Friday is the Friday during Easter, so during the Semana Santa. So it was, I think it was signed on that week, on that day.
Naples.
And this power sharing agreement is, you know much about Colombian history? Frente Nacional? It's kind of the same idea. Basically, they didn't swap at the same time. There would always be a Republican and a Unionist party in power sharing the power. So to avoid issues, it hasn't really, but there's a lot of delays. So their government, I think, for the past few years, it's called a deadlock. So nothing's happened, like nothing, because they can't agree. They won't agree to do anything, so just nothing happens, and it's really, really bad. The biggest parties are Sinn Féin, which is Irish Republican, and the DUP. I think it's Democratic Unionist Party, which is Unionist. Did you understand everything? That was quite a lot. Did you understand everything over the past 4 slides about the countries? Yeah. Any questions? No.
Okay, one. London? No, England?
Yeah.
England. Yeah. 1 million people, I forgot. Yeah.
56 million, 5 million in Scotland, 3 million in Wales, and 2 million in Northern Ireland. So you can see that England is bigger than the other countries combined. But Scotland, I don't know about size. Scotland is very big. The difference in photos probably doesn't show it. If you look at this one, there's actually a lot of. It's a very big country. So a lot of this area up here is very very unpopulated. Like not even farmers. It's just empty. Very nice scenery there. Any more questions about any of the countries? Any of the stuff we talked about? Nope.
No.
Okay, more reading. This is probably easier to understand. The only one, ignore this. I'll talk about that. Well, you read it, but you may not understand it. This word is probably the hardest. A constituency is an area which elects someone to parliament. So, like, I don't know how it works here in Colombia. How you elect your I don't know how you elect your representatives here in Colombia. A constituency is an area of land where they elect someone to the MP. So every member of parliament, a person in the parliament, represents a specific area called a constituency.
Mickey Mouse.
Sí, yo también estaba como.
Okay. Try and read through this. I'll give you a few minutes.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
¿Voy a tomar algo, Ángeles? ¿No?
Está bien.
¿Tú?
Ok.
Un americano.
¿Tú?
Yo un cappuccino.
Oscar?
Cappuccino. Government can call it when they want, but it has to be at least 5 years. Every 5 years, sorry.
When they want.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
Crazy, no?
but it's like, but like, so
Until 5 years.
there is a maximum. So it has to be within 5 years. Within 5 years, it can be called earlier if the government wants. And we'll talk about in a second, they do that sometimes.
Okay.
Okay. And for example, here in Colombia, the people vote
Mhm.
for each person, right?
Yeah.
In UK, the people vote for each party, or
No, they vote for a person.
each person too.
So you vote for a person, a member of parliament.
Member of Parliament.
And members of parliament represent a constituency. A constituency is an area of land which votes for a member of parliament. For example, I don't know how many. In London, I live in the Hammersmith and Fulham constituency, I think. So people in that area vote for one member of parliament, which goes to parliament. Do you understand? A constituency is just an area of land divided up. There are like 650 constituencies. So there are 650 members of parliament. First past the post. This is it's like Germany. If a party gets 40% the party gets 40% of the vote in the entire country, they get 40% of the seats. In the UK, whichever party gets the most votes in a constituency, that member is chosen. So, for example, if the Conservatives or the Conservative candidate gets 50% of the vote, and the Labour candidate gets 40% of the vote, the Conservatives win, and the Labour gets nothing.
Okay.
So it's a little bit controversial, but that's how it is. I'll show you an example in a second of what that can mean. But
Party.
yes, party is a political party.
It's weird
Party
too.
like a political-
Yeah. That's weird too.
But yes, you're right, you vote for a person, and that person belongs to a political party. Okay, you understand?
What do you mean?
So the person, you vote for a candidate, a person, but that person represents a party. For example, he is a Conservative candidate. So when he goes to Parliament, he is Conservative. Do you understand? Any questions? Oops, ignore that. Any questions? No? Do you understand? That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
More or less. Okay. I think it's very similar to how in the US, for example, people vote for a person, and that like a senator, and that senator is part of a party, is a member of a party, for example. The only big difference is that there is no president. So the prime minister is the most important figure, but he is only the leader of the most powerful party. So you don't vote specifically for the prime minister. You vote for the party by voting for a member of a party, and then the leader of that party becomes prime minister. No separate elections.
Do you know what is the main reason why is prime minister and not president?
Presidents are elected separately. So the closest thing that we have to a president is, I guess, the king. But you don't vote for a king, and the king doesn't have any power. So it's just it's called the Westminster system. So in places like Canada and Australia, it's the same.
Yeah. What's the name in English? Israel is.
Yeah.
You know.
But they have a president as well.
President. Yeah.
They have a president and a prime minister.
Minister, yeah.
I don't know why. So there's the monarchy. So a lot of people have asked about this, and realistically, so the UK is a constitutional monarchy. What this means is that while the king has theoretical power to make laws, block laws, or get rid of parliament, realistically, he has none of these powers. He cannot use them because all of the power is with the elected officials. If he did use them, he wouldn't be king for very long. People would get rid of him. It's like there's a balance. Realistically, the monarch has no power over government policy or laws in the UK. No real power. Only theoretical power. He could, I don't know, I think he could do whatever he wants, but It wouldn't. Any questions? This is quite a short summary. Any questions about this?
Oh, your new
Our new
king.
king.
Your new king.
Are
Sorry.
you excited for that?
Let's see.
New king.
New king.
Inshallah.
Any questions about the monarchy or about its role in UK politics? Understand? Yeah. We'll see what happens over the next 10 years, 20 years with the monarchy. I think it's quite interesting to see, because it's not really about his political position, it's about his public support. So the Queen was a very popular person. He is less popular. Do you know about? Has anyone watched? Have you watched The Crown? Yeah, about Princess Diana.
Mm-hmm.
He was married to Princess Diana before the divorce, and for that reason, he's quite unpopular. One of his sons is also very unpopular because he's a paedophile.
But I think this is a high power. I think the monarch has power
Yes.
to create.
No, his
or
powers-
laws.
His theoretical powers are very strong, but if he used them, people would riot because he just wouldn't. The UK is a democracy.
Yeah, have to dissolve parliament. Or...
Yeah, he could, but he wouldn't. You understand?
Yeah.
It's like kind of like a paradox. Okay. I talked about these terms: the House of Commons
Yeah.
and the House of Lords. But you've heard of the House of Commons. Yeah. House of Commons is what everyone thinks of when they think of Parliament, because it's elected, it creates and passes laws, and the MPs usually members of a political party. So this is, if you watch it in films, if it's ever in a film or TV show, this is what they'll usually show. The House of Lords is kind of like the upper chamber, like you have the House of Representatives and the Senate in the US. It's maybe the closest example, but the powers are very different. These guys they are not elected, so they're appointed for life. So people who serve in here serve for life. Usually they're appointed by the government. There are also some bishops, so church figures as well. This is like a relic. This is a historical relic, basically. So for 500 years ago, these guys were more powerful than the House of Commons. But nowadays, it's exactly the opposite. They're very limited authority, so they can block laws. So when the House of Commons makes a law and passes it, it goes here, and they can block it, but only for a limited amount of time. And if they block it, it goes back to the House of Commons anyway. So really, all you need to understand is that really all the power is here. And this is more like an advisory, so that they give advice, they give feedback on government laws, and yeah, it's more like it's a leftover from history because it's really not that powerful anymore. But it's still controversial, and it's controversial. I don't really like it because it's still the idea that you have unelected people kind of making.
There are many, House of Lords in the House of Lords.
There are many lords.
I don't know how is the name.
No, most
In
of
Colombia, senador o representante.
but they're not. The important difference is that they're not elected.
Not
Elected. So there's no.
not elected. It's the
By the
person.
people.
No.
The person.
What is the name of person that works in House of Lords?
Senator?
No, not senator.
Parliament?
They're called peer. P-E-E-R. A peer is a term for someone who
Peer.
serves in here. But like, it's just, it doesn't really do anything, to be honest. It's like, nowadays, if they try to, actually stop laws or do anything major, they'll be gone in an instant. It's just, I don't really like the House of Lords very much because it's unelected and it's undemocratic, but that's just my view. Okay, moving on. Recent political history. Yeah. How much do you know about British politics? You've heard of Boris Johnson? Anyone else you can name?
No, I don't know.
Any other people?
Nothing.
No, nothing.
Nothing?
There's a, but it's no reason. Margaret Thatcher was.
That was, yeah, not really. That was a very, very important person. Falklands War, she started that. Well, she didn't start it, she fought it.
Yeah.
We won't talk about her because she's too long here. So, we're starting here. 2000 House of Parliament. You can also have, they're called by-elections. So, for example, if a member of Parliament resigns or dies or just leaves their post outside of a general election, there's like one special election for that area only. But in the general election, there are elections in all constituencies and all of the space throughout the UK. This was I'll show you the winner on the left here and the loser on the left here. This across to make sure. This is a guy called what was his name actually? Shit. Gordon Brown. He was Scottish Labour. Labour had been in power since 1997. So for 13 years there was only a Labour government, and it all changed here in 2010. This is a guy called David Cameron, leader of the Conservative Party, and he won this election, but he didn't get a majority. So he didn't have the majority of the seats. They're called seats. So if there are, how many seats are there? Let's say there are 600 seats. To get a majority, you need 301, which means that you have the power to pass laws. So you can guarantee, as long as all your members vote for you, that any law will be passed. It's the same, I think, in Congress, in the US, probably here as well. But it was called a hung parliament, which basically meant that no party had enough seats to make a majority government. So they formed something called a coalition government with these guys, the Liberal Democrats, who I talked about earlier. They were like the third biggest party. But really, it was the Conservatives who were in charge.
Okay.
That's all you need to know, because since 2010, there has always been a Conservative government in power. So for the past 13 years, only Conservatives,
Okay.
unfortunately. This guy became Prime Minister, David Cameron, had been in power from 2010 to the present day. I don't really know what to say about. It became quite famous for austerity. Austerity was an economic approach. Have you heard of it? Austerity is
Here in Colombia, no.
No.
But
You've
hear
heard of
about
it. Yeah. Because of the economic crisis, it was cutting back on spending, raising taxes, everything to try and combat, and it was quite unpopular for that reason. But that's what they did. Talked about this before. The Scottish independence referendum in 2014. If you look at the map here, red means they voted against. The different shades of red means they voted against independence, and blue means they voted for independence. But but it was actually very close, because these areas here are more populated, so there's more people. So even though it looks like the more people voted no, most people live here.
Okay.
It was backed by the Scottish National Party and its leader Alex Salmond. The UK government actually agreed to this referendum, so they said you can hold this referendum, but they supported the no vote, obviously, because they wanted Scotland to remain in the United Kingdom. Main issues included health, education, the economy. Generally, the idea was that the SNP, Scottish National Party, wanted freedom from Westminster, because they felt that Westminster was deciding Scottish problems. It's understandable. I understand the reasons.
This was before what's the name?
Brexit.
Brexit. Yeah.
Brexit is the next one, I think. Oh no, the second next one. The referendum failed. 55% of the people who voted to stay in the UK. Believe. Yeah. Any questions about that?
This area, you said that it's empty for
These
some,
bits. Yeah, not literally, but there very few people live.
because
comparatively.
the temperature, or for why?
I mean, It's kind of wilderness. Do you know what that means? Wilderness. It means very, very rural. There are no cities. There are some towns.
Like a forest? Or
Yeah, forest. Not forest as much. It's just
Urban
I don't know how to describe it. The landscape is quite rugged. It means it's quite hard to live there. You
Okay,
can't really
okay.
build cities there that easily. People do live here.
Como
Farmers.
inhóspito.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's very nice. Very pretty.
Mm.
That you could be allowed. Like the past election, the Conservatives. By the way, these guys are also called Tories. A nickname, I guess, for the Conservatives is the Tories. So you might hear people, if you're listening to news about British politics, you might hear them refer to the Tories. That just means Conservatives. They won outright majority. Outright means, in this case, on their own. So they got the majority of the seats. They didn't need a coalition government, so they could do it on their own, and they did. In Scotland, the SNP won a landslide victory, so I think they won pretty much every seat, despite failing the referendum the year before. They still won. UKIP, have you heard of UKIP?
No, I don't know what it is.
UK Independence Party. They're very pro-Brexit, very pro-Brexit. This was before Brexit, but they came third in the total vote share. So TrarePoint's got a big amount of the votes. They only got 1 seat in total. And most importantly, perhaps, the Conservative campaigning included a promise to hold a referendum on EU membership. Do you understand all of that?
promise to hold.
Referendum.
The European Union.
Okay.
Sorry,
okay.
the European Union is often called the EU. It's the initials. If you don't understand anything or want to clarify anything, just say it and we can talk. Because I'm trying to follow the script here, but it's easier if we just talk. Any questions? Anything you're confused about?
How long the Conservatives have been in the power?
13 years. From
10 years.
today, 13 years.
Yes.
Oh no, it's a long time. The next year, there should be an election next year, and they'll hopefully lose. Probably lose. So. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Conservatives are, I don't know. What is the word?
Right wing? Left wing?
They are opposite of to the independence of
Scotland. Yes.
Scotland.
Yes.
Yeah, it's opposite to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the Conservative government agreed to a referendum, so they said it could happen, but they very strongly supported the no vote. So they encouraged people to vote no.
Okay.
The Conservatives, so I should explain. Conservatives, I think it's like here. Conservatives are kind of centre right, and Labour are centre left. More or less.
Okay.
The the UKIP are further right than the Conservatives. Further right than the Conservatives. Right wing. Okay. The elephant in the room. The big one. Brexit. Definitely the most important political event of the past, 20 years in the UK. At least 20, probably more like 50. So this was held in 2016. If you remember, the Conservatives promised to hold this. Cameron, who was the Prime Minister, and most of the government officially supported. It was called the Remain vote. Remain wanted to remain in the EU. Leave wanted to leave. That was kind of the names that were given to the two campaigns. So the UK government and Labour, the Labour opposition, supported Remain, but a lot of Conservative MPs campaigned for Leave. So they didn't follow the party line, if that makes sense. They're called Eurosceptic. Skeptic means to be skeptical, means to doubt something, and Euro is just European Union. So Eurosceptic means they didn't believe that the EU was a good option for the UK.
Okay.
So that's just important to note, is that because nowadays the Conservative Party it's very pro-Brexit.
Mhm.
Back then, officially it was not, but a lot of people in the Conservative Party wanted Brexit, so they campaigned for it. Key issues included immigration, national identity, and sovereignty. Do you know what this word
No,
means?
no, I don't know.
Do you? Sovereignty.
Yeah.
Do you understand it?
Yeah, it's like
If you can translate it
In Spanish,
as
yeah.
well.
soberanía.
Ah,
So it was basically the idea that Britain should be independent. A lot of people felt that the EU was too bossy, like it made too many laws, and the UK should be independent from those laws. I don't agree, but that's just my opinion. So the Leave vote won, 51%, really close. And this was a big shock. Most people didn't expect this. Most people. So I was in. My granddad worked in as a local councillor in a local government, and on the night of the vote, because I couldn't vote, I was too young. We went to watch as they were counting the votes, and as the results came in, and it looked good to begin with. Like a lot of people, it looked like the first results. It was going to be, we're going to stay in the EU. So I went to bed. Next morning, I woke up, bam. But it took 4 years for us to actually leave the EU. So it was really, we'll talk about that in a second, but it's a very long, complicated process. And the Prime Minister resigned because he had said, if we vote for Brexit, I will resign, because he didn't agree with it personally. Should explain the map. Yellow is Remain and blue is Leave.
okay.
So the entirety of Scotland voted to remain, which is why now there's still a very strong. A lot of people in Scotland think that Scotland should be independent and rejoin the EU independently because they voted to remain. And pretty much the whole of the UK, or the rest of the UK, especially England, voted to leave. Especially these northern areas. The exception is like the big cities voted to remain, but everywhere else voted to leave. Big shock. So how many years? Oops, shit. How many years? This was in 2017. How many years since the last election? When was the election before that? If you remember.
5 years.
No, it was in 1 year?
2 years.
2 years.
2015.
Actually,
2015. 2017. So they didn't have to call this. So because David Cameron resigned as Prime Minister, this woman took over. Her name is Theresa May. And she didn't have to call this election, but she wanted to, because she wanted to get authority from the people for Brexit, basically. Because even after Brexit was voted on, there were different types of Brexit. It was very complicated about how you would leave the EU. So she wanted to call this election to kind of gain power, basically, to get more seats and to get more authority. It went really wrong. They won the largest amount of seats, but they actually lost their majority. So if you remember in 2010, they had to form an alliance with the Liberal Democrats. Here, they had to do it with a party called DUP. Do you remember?
Oh, no, I remember.
It's Northern Ireland. They were the Northern Ireland Unionist Party. So they had to form an alliance to actually pass any laws. Really went wrong. But the key issues, obviously the biggest one, Brexit negotiations and national security, because shortly before this election there were 2 terrorist attacks in London by Islamist terrorists on bridges in London. But they did still stay in power, more or less. And then Boris Johnson. So the previous Prime Minister was basically forced to resign because the negotiations failed, they didn't go very well, and the party forced her to resign, basically. So this guy took over, Boris Johnson. He's certainly a divisive figure, very controversial, he's putting it kindly. So he called this election for the same reason as the last one, to try and gain power. And it worked because they won a big majority in Parliament. So now they have it's called a remit, it's basically like their authorization to go and get Brexit done, which they took. And they won a significant majority. Brexit negotiations were by far the main issue. Some people think about this, I think about this as the second Brexit. This one was, are we sure we really want it? So by voting for Conservatives, the people said, we want to get Brexit done, basically. And they did. We left the European Union in 2020, so 4 years after the referendum. And this is quite a funny picture. I'll explain this in a moment. So the 2020s so far were marked by Brexit and COVID. COVID obviously was a really big issue, and kind of indirectly led to Boris Johnson's resignation as Prime Minister. Have you ever heard of Partygate? Partygate. So the Conservative government, like here in Colombia, there were restrictions. You can't, meet with that many people during COVID. They were like, you can't go outside to try and stop the spread. But we had the same in the UK. It's called Number 10 Downing Street. It's where the Prime Minister lives. This was a party that they had during the lockdown. Crazy. Very, very controversial. There was also accusations of corruption and a sexual assault scandal. So between all of those things, he finally resigned. Yeah.
No, okay.
Well, maybe it's sort of like a different sort of corruption you get here.
Is it different?
It was like the scandal was about expenses. So Prime Ministers of Parliament could submit like expenses, like if you do like travel on the job and you need that money back, you claim it back. But they were claiming for things that they probably shouldn't have claimed for. Like he redecorated his flat and claimed it off the taxpayer, for example. But yeah, he finally resigned. He's really controversial. I really don't. Liz Truss. Have you heard of him?
Yeah. Well, after Boris Johnson,
Yeah.
She was the prime minister, right?
Yeah, she was prime minister, the shortest prime minister ever, 49 days, because she introduced an economic policies that went really badly, a lot of anger, so she resigned. And this image, I should explain this image. This is a lettuce. You understand? A lettuce?
No, lettuce. Yeah.
Lechuga.
Okay.
It's it's called a head of lettuce. It's just a lettuce. And this newspaper ran not a campaign, but like they wanted to see whether she would resign as prime minister before this lettuce went rotten. And she did. So the lettuce beat the prime minister, basically.
No way.
This is British humour at its finest. Even when everything's going really badly, you can still have a joke about it.
That is so funny.
So the lettuce won, and he's still prime minister. It's conservative chaos because this year was total chaos from start to finish.
Rishi Sunak is the
Rishi
Sunak is the
prime minister
prime minister
at the moment. He's still prime minister. He hasn't resigned yet, as far as I'm aware.
But he's okay. What is the background of?
He's British but of Indian descent.
Indian?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he might be the first black prime minister, actually, or like first non-white prime minister. Probably, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the UK is in a really bad state at the moment, politically and socially and economically and everything. So this kind of sums it up. Yeah.
But nowadays, the things are going better or not?
I wouldn't know. It's very expensive. Energy is very expensive. People aren't getting paid. Like inflation has gone up a lot. It's not good. Any questions? There was a lot of information in that presentation, I'm afraid. Any questions at all?